All right. I say we get started. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see people. And welcome to the Q4 2024 community call. The agenda for today, as always, we're going to have some org updates, but just a quick recap on the multi-org proposal for 2025 before we go into those org updates, and then general Q&A if folks have additional questions. So on the multi-org proposal for 2025, this was indeed passed. So this year what we did was we brought together proposals for the Foundation, DRIPS, Radicle, and Radworks product, all in one proposal, which meant that we could do some negotiations beforehand, get folks on the same page, really stress test a lot of these proposals and budgets beforehand, and then put it to a vote in December. We had a little bit of a technical snafu in the December proposal when it went on chain, hence why there was a call for a revote in January. So appreciate those of you who were able to vote again on this proposal. It did indeed pass, and I believe all the proposal was executed on chain today. So funds are in the bank for those orgs that requested more funding, specifically DRIPS and Radworks Product Org. So there we have it. Money in the bank, good times. We can pay people. It's great news. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to then Jason, who will give the update for the DRIPS org, their quarterly update for Q4. Over to you, Jason.
Hey, everyone. Show the screen. Okay, can you all see? Yes?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. Hey, so I'm presenting on behalf of Ele because he's out sick, unfortunately. So I'm just going to walk you through his post real quick. I'm going to start, though, with just like a few product updates from Q4, some of them quite exciting. So the first major news, obviously, is that we've launched on Filecoin officially now. We already talked about this last time. Basically, of course, the Filecoin Retro PGF2, which is about, I believe, 1.6 million at the current Filecoin price, is going to be distributed through DRIPS. And as part of that, we've deployed on Filecoin fully. So on filecoin.drips.network, you can now interact with DRIPS natively on the Filecoin chain. The actual distribution for this has been pushed back for reasons unrelated to us in any way. But it is bound to happen finally in the last week of January, which would be like within the following days. So that's going to be a major milestone for us. That's the first thing. And then also on Filecoin, for now exclusively, but also on other chains for the future, we've launched gasless claiming, which is quite exciting. So basically this allows maintainers and owners of projects to claim their projects without having any gas in their wallets, or like any native token rather, which is quite nice, especially for like L2s where it might be a little bit complicated or hard to actually acquire the native gas token. Now you don't need that. Like you can in fact claim your project without having any gas at all, just with the signature, and then even collect earnings if you have any. And we will even unwrap like wrapped native tokens for you as part of that, also entirely gaslessly. So long story short, like on Filecoin, now people can claim their projects without having any Filecoin, and then collect the Filecoin also without having any Filecoin. And then obviously they end up with Filecoin in their wallet, which they can then use to like pay for gas for like off-ramping and stuff like that. Which is quite nice. And we're going to launch this. We're planning to launch this on all of the like low-cost L2s that we're going to deploy, which there are many more to come in the near future. Then also something quite exciting is embeddable support buttons, which also launched in Q4. Shout out to Morgan for that one. I can actually show this to you real quick. So now any project, no matter whether you're the owner of it or not, you can click on the share button and then click the little configure button down here. And you can like customize this little like support me button here, which can even include dynamic data, like the amount of dependencies you're splitting to and the amount of funds that you've received. And this will then like copy and embed code that you can put right into your GitHub README. and it updates, I believe, every 2 hours or something like that. So it's all dynamic, which is pretty cool. This has been something that people have asked us for before, so pretty happy that this is finally a thing. Moving on, we also have, is anything else back here? Yeah, right, okay, of course, visibility controls. This seems a little bit mundane at first, but it's actually quite important. So first of all, there are kind of two problems that we had. One, we had a whole bunch of like test projects also on mainnet, which ideally people wouldn't see, like they're just, just kind of trying stuff out, making sure everything works. Especially on new networks, that was a problem because, initially there were no real projects being claimed, and like all the recently claimed were just like Yanis's and my test repositories, which is a bit dumb. So now you can basically hide stuff like on chain by setting some metadata. And also what is important is that grip lists are, of course, NFTs actually, and they can be transferred to people. And up until now, actually, you could just transfer some grip list with like, I don't know, bad words in the name or anything like that, like to someone, and would just show up on their profile, which is not ideal. So now they automatically get marked as hidden and then have to be explicitly unhidden by the recipient in order to actually appear on the profile, which solves a problem that, hasn't been a problem yet, but, better to get ahead of it. Moving on, we have a new search engine, which is super exciting. So we always had the search bar, but it was kind of not like broken, honestly. Like it didn't really work very well. So now we can actually just like search for anything. Well, I'm searching for test. It's not good. Oh, great. And it doesn't seem to be working. Hold on. The demo effect. Am I still online?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This is embarrassing.
What the hell?
Oh, well. Okay, we're going to look right into that. And you can try for yourself after the call. Sorry for that. Okay, anyway, this is kind of minor compared to what's coming next anyway, which is Drips AI. So quite a big thing. We announced this recently because basically what happened is that at DEF CON, where the whole team was late last year, we had a quick conversation with Vitalik, and he basically told us, like, look into algorithmic / AI, distribution or like allocation of funds, and like we should start looking into this in order to basically improve the velocity of funds like flowing through an ecosystem on Drips. And we did quite a lot of thinking about this, and there's also obviously a lot of hype around this, and like we thought, okay, let's tap into this and like do our own thing. So Drips AI is kind of what came out of this. We've announced it. We are now kind of in the stages of developing the first features of the Drips AI suite, let's say. And just to very quickly sum it up, like the idea behind Drips AI is that we're building this kind of toolkit, if you will, and we call it an end-to-end solution for creating and deploying algorithmic capital allocations on chain with built-in distribution functionality. So we're basically thinking like we already have a lot of the components that people can use in order to do AI-assisted or AI-based capital allocation. And we just want to like extend those capabilities in order to become almost like a framework for doing these kinds of things on chain. And that includes a training data set, which is, of course, like what we already have, which is just a list of self-reported dependencies for a bunch of major projects, right? Because whenever a project gets claimed on Drips, we ask their maintainers to actually self-report dependencies, which is a lot more valuable than just like pulling dependencies from GitHub, because we get value assessments and also just, the maintainers actually thinking about it and like making a human judgment. Then we have, of course, allocation. So, we would have tools for basically like using this data and like run some kind of model in order to build a large scale allocation. Then we have distribution tools. Much of this we already have in Drips, which is quite exciting. So Drips already allows you to just fund any GitHub repository, which is kind of a must for doing like large scale entire ecosystem type funding activities, because otherwise you're going to be, chasing people for Ethereum addresses until the end of time. And then we also have data acquisition already built in, because again, when a project actually gets claimed, the maintainers automatically generate data that further enhances the training data set by just self-reporting dependencies. And then also benchmarking. So we are looking into some ways to basically compare, if you will, the human judgment data that we've acquired with output from models or any kind of other like algorithmic allocation mechanisms, and just kind of understand like how well did this actually work. So that's the long-term vision. Of course, we're not just building everything all at once. We have to start somewhere. And so the first thing we're working on now is something we call ecosystems, which is a new feature in the app that we're working on, which is going to be kind of a new top-level entity alongside projects and lists. And ecosystems are basically like very big drip lists that can theoretically be of unlimited size. The only like upper bound being like our willingness to pay for the gas for these things. But of course, this is going to happen on low-cost L2s. So you have basically these like 2D, two-dimensional drip lists now, where the thing is actually represented as a graph of nodes, where each node represents a project, and then connections to other projects, which are connected through like a weighted edge, right? Which corresponds to like the amount of funds that flow from this particular node to that particular dependency. And the idea is that these ecosystems can be created long-term using built-in like AI models or other algorithmic allocation solutions. Or you can just actually just upload a very big CSV that describes this entire graph. And then we process it for you and like create an ecosystem out of it. And just as drip lists or projects, they can just be funded with a single transaction or a stream over time. And I think this is pretty exciting because it kind of like moves the like graph intelligence that is inherent to drips right now to the like level of the allocation itself, which means you can have a lot more control of like what exactly you try to fund. So that's the place where we're starting. And what's even more exciting than this is that we already have the first user of this kind of in the bank, which is awesome. And that's Deep Funding, which is actually a new project from Vitalik himself. So he announced this recently. We are involved in this as one of the organizations taking care of making this a thing. So the idea behind Deep Funding is basically that there's going to be an initial data set generated by like experts that judge in like spot pairwise voting the importance of different dependencies for a particular like project. And then that's a data set that then will be used to like by people to kind of compete for making an algorithmic allocation mechanism that best matches the actual human judgment. So the idea is that, as it says here, like you'd have some human judgment and then you try to scale that to like the scale of an entire ecosystem. And basically what's going to happen is this is going to, they're going to work on this. The competition is going to happen. At some point, the winner will be announced. And then we're actually going to use that model to create a allocation for the Ethereum ecosystem. And that's going to be one of those ecosystems on Drips, and it will be funded directly through Drips. So the distribution part will be done by us. So yeah, we're super excited about this. Should be happening quite soon. Of course, stay tuned for the updates there. Cool. What else is in here that I didn't talk about? Right, we were at DEF CON, of course. We also had an offsite in Thailand, which was very nice. We also did some presentations. Ele did a very nice talk, which went a little bit viral on Twitter about meme coins. Right, of course, Ethereum Foundation partnership. So we do have a partnership with Ethereum Foundation. The details aren't public yet, but they should be very quickly. So yes, the DEF CON team is basically going to start funding its critical dependencies on Drips within Q1, which is going to be announced very soon. And then there's also some additional partnerships in the works, including Metis and also ZK Sync. So more updates on those very shortly. Lastly, let's quickly go over the objectives. So right now we ended the year with 6 organizations using Drips, and then an additional 4, some of which I just mentioned, are going live in Q1. We closed with 1.9 million dripping on Drips, and another 1.6 is going to come from Filecoin in Q1 very shortly. And we have hit about 340 FOSS projects being registered on Drips across mainnet and Filecoin, which is already quite respectable number, I think. And budget, yeah, we're actually slightly below budget right now. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Great. Thank you, Jason. Any questions for him? All right. Such cool news, Jason. Thank you for being the bearer of good news. Wonderful. All right, then we'll move on to Radicle next.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one question. The Filecoin network, is it EVM compatible? Like, how did you port the contracts to it?
Yeah, they have a EVM compatibility layer basically, and it's
I didn't even know you could do that on Filecoin.
yeah, it's a relatively new thing. It's also like still a little bit rough around the edges, but we did manage to make it happen, and it does work. Yeah,
it's cool. Okay, so I have the update here. Okay, it's a pretty small update. So yeah, the main thing that happened in the last few months is that we did a new Radicle release 1.1. It's kind of an in-between release before some of the big things that are coming. And we wanted to kind of just get a bunch of small things out there, quality of life improvements and things like that, before we release kind of the bigger protocol updates, starting with canonical refs. So that went well. There were no hitches or anything. Everything was fine. We did some migrations of the COP database, which was kind of the most complicated part of the release to figure out. But yeah, it went well, and now we have some practice doing that for next time. So in terms of objectives and stuff, yeah, the main thing is canonical references that was planned for Q1. So this is on track, and it's going through another round of reviews, and I think we're pretty close to merging that. Multi-device support is the next big thing. So we're probably going to do canonical refs in Radicle 1.2, and then multi-device will land in maybe 1.3 or 1.4. It might take a bit longer, so I might skip a couple releases before we're ready for this. There's 3 separate RIPs, if I remember, specifying the different parts of multi-device, because we have there's how to sort of organize the data in repos with what we call agents, which are essentially users of the network, and those are going to be stored in repositories. And then there's how we actually do key management for an agent. So how does a user have multiple devices and actually add or remove devices? So yeah, there's multiple aspects to this. It's fairly complicated, but the 3 RIPs, the 3 changes are necessary, but also can be used independently or are useful independently for implementing all kinds of cool things. The CI cob has been merged. It's under a beta namespace, so that we don't we're probably still going to break things and change things there, but we're starting to figure out how we're going to integrate all of this with Radicle. The desktop app is moving nicely. That of course is going to move to the new product team, or has already moved as of January 1st. But since this is an update about last year, we have, from what I remember, working repo, issue, and patch browsing. Patch browsing is still under design, but it's functional. And then the other aspects are also working quite nicely. And then on the TUI, we've made some progress on code browsing. Code review. And that's starting to look pretty cool. So you're able to kind of see all of the hunks so all of the pieces of code that have changed, navigate them, view one of them at a time, accept, reject, comment, stuff like that. And that's going to be all done in the TUI. At least that will be probably the first place with functional code review. It's going to be in the TUI. In terms of events, we had the second Radicle Inspect. I don't think I talked about that in the last update, but that went well. It was around the repo identity and consensus, so like everything to do with delegates and how they come to an agreement in terms of how repo should be updated. So that was quite fun. And we spoke at CCC, so Chaos Computer Club, in December. So that was Lawrence who went there and did a talk on at the critical decentralization cluster, and that was very well received. And yeah, it was apparently great. I wasn't there. Yeah, so that's about it for Radicle. Questions?
Thanks, Alexi. Go ahead, Morgan.
I'm just looking at the the event page. Speak. Can't speak any language today. At that page, exactly. I'm just trying to find. Is there like a video of the presentation or anything?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. Okay.
I think Lorenz said it was recorded, but they're not out, possibly.
Yeah, it's possible. This always happens where like several of the talks have been apparent. Like Git merge, I don't know if we have a video for it, but I've seen some videos from Git merge. So yeah, this keeps on happening where it's like recorded, but then like they release the videos months later, and you kind of forget about it. So,
Okay. Alrighty.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, if we come across videos, I'll post them somewhere.
What's carry and Radicle?
Oh yeah. So carry is a specification for a type of DID. So it's kind of like a DID method, a type of DID protocol, let's say, for managing multiple keys essentially under a single system or a single yeah, there's a link there. And this is a potential potential DID protocol that we're thinking of using for Radicle agents. So yeah, one of the RIPs essentially is proposing how DID carry could be integrated with Radicle essentially. And it's kind of a set of rules for adding and removing keys, essentially, rotating keys, adding metadata, like kind of managing a DID document that has multiple authorized parties, authorized keys.
Interesting. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Big photo policy. Yeah, I feel like somehow CCC might not release stuff, but if it was recorded, what would be the point of that? I don't know. Yeah, maybe just a sound recording with slides. I don't know.
Thanks, Alexi.
All right.
I just want to also call out that Radicle was also under budget by the end of 2024 too.
Right.
Hence why the Radicle Org didn't request more funding for 2025. So just wanted to call that out since it wasn't in your blurb. But your remaining funds will be are all that's needed to keep on maintaining things through 2025.
Yeah. We've reduced the headcount quite a bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe we can just quickly recap folks at the end after Johannes has updated. Maybe we can just have a kind of like a regroup on or organizationally now that there's a Radworks product and a Radicle Org, how people have been distributed and how development is working.
Yeah, because I think it'll be it's not this one. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here, there's a bit of the a bit of the update is here. We can maybe go over this at some point.
Sounds good.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Alexi.
Thanks.
All right. On to Johannes.
All right. Small correction. I won't be updating about Radworks product because this is about Q4 and it didn't exist back then. I will be talking about RSN. So let's quickly get into the mindset of RSN for a second. Because I think it makes for a good story, let's let's quickly recap. Let's quickly jump back to the beginning of last year. I just want to bring back one important sentence here. When Radworks seed network was about to be started, the purpose in one sentence is hosting, fetching content from Radicle, simple and performant for any developer. Why I'm bringing this up is that I want to demonstrate that we didn't forget about this mission and the trust the community put in this proposal and how it will be carried on forward. So then we basically moved through Q3, the updates, quickly building a version of the centralized seed network, and that helped us, to talk to people, to run a couple of demos with people to see how they interact, and also to see why they wouldn't interact with it. And this will bring us now to Q4. Started here with a nice quote. That I think basically captures the essence of Q4. One thing that we initially set out to do was in the initial plan and the initial tokenomics and everything, we said tokens are great for creating supply, right? We can bootstrap a network by utilizing the tokens and our existing equity there to incentivize demand supply to a point where we have a network that can be interesting for people to use. The caveat there is something that I think we underestimated in the beginning, is that other networks that have successfully implemented that strategy have been basically dealing in commodity like compute or content retrieval, like looking at the cache Filecoin. The demand was already there. People wanted stuff computed. People wanted to store their stuff somewhere. So because our Radicle in that sense is not a commodity, it meant that we had a certain they didn't only need to choose a supplier, the customers, they also needed to choose a new product, right? So I think that was one of the essential learnings there. So the result of that was that we said, okay, we need to get to a point where people choose the product and then it's easy to supply it, right? The conversations have been tremendously helpful in identifying what is currently where are currently the frictions, why are people potentially showing hesitation in adopting Radicle. First of all, it's not too long ago that version 1 was released, and I think it's fair to not expect people to jump on it before there's a stable release to it. But now it's a great time to really question why people wouldn't use it, right? So the conclusion was basically that we need to create more demand, and all in alignment with the original mission, right? So how do we create this demand is focusing really on execution of the product, on creating a nice package for our customers. That was the conclusion, and this is how the Radworks product or proposal in the end was created, and what we're currently working on. The current status is we've started this new team, and in the next quarterly update I will share much more about that. Really exciting stuff coming up. But for now, let's stay in Q4. What we did was we launched a centralized service for community members, closed beta, basically. Learned a lot. Measuring and collecting performance and adoption metrics is kind of collecting quantitative feedback. In the end, not fully achieved. We've mainly focused on qualitative feedback, so like talking to the users, and we're taking a lot of that back into our new team. The next thing was missing components. We've quickly acted on the user feedback, for example, that, oh yeah, the real value doesn't come from just the hosting, it comes from CI. So for demos, we quickly set up everything that already works with Radicle through like third-party CI providers, and could demo a huge increase in like value for adoption. So that was done. Centralized offering in alignment with user feedback, CI integration step forward. Yes. After CI, that unblocked us, for the next conversation, for bringing up the next challenge. Is like, okay, how would I manage identities? How does the workflow work compared to what I'm used to in GitHub or something, right? So really interesting conversations. The open question is basically the decentralized offering, right? The decentralized offering was an essential part of the RSN story, right? Start with a centralized version and go to decentralization, because we could easily solve the supply problem with a centralized service. We didn't even go into the decentralized approach yet. I think for the value alignment, of course, the decentralization needs to happen, and but we were just not there yet. So those 2 points have been postponed. And a quick note on the budget: we are well under the budget, because we have postponed the hiring and have done a lot of the hiring as internal transfers in Q1 now. The remaining budget will be going back to the treasury, as far as I understand the process. So yeah, that's my update. Let me know if I can help you with any questions.
Thank you, Johannes. Are there any questions for him? Great. Okay, then I will go ahead and bring things over to the foundation side before maybe we return to talk a little bit more about how RSN and Radicle are moving from 2024 into 2025, and sort of maybe between Johannes and Alexi can provide a little overview there for those who sort of missed the proposal. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So as far as general announcements go, we are, going forward, the scope of the foundation will continue to get a little bit more narrow. You can check out the foundation's 2025 proposal as well on community.radworks. But just as an FYI, kind of the core people contributing are myself, Sally, both of who you know very well, Natasha, who's actually on the call today, our newly hired admin support, and as well as Daniel, who's on the legal side. We are all very, very part-time, so if you do need to get a hold of us, please contact ops at betterinternet.foundation. A few things on the horizon as well. And a couple things I just wanted to draw attention to. For those of you who saw our proposal, this will feel familiar, but for those who didn't, the foundation will be working with org leads to determine any legal work that should be prioritized at orgs going forward. So this is why orgs had their own legal budget as part of their respective org budgets. This will mean that we can work closely with org leads to make sure work is clear and rightfully or not rightfully rightfully prioritized, and deprioritize any legal work that might not be as time sensitive, or prioritize things depending on any, especially if we see any, new receipt of funds, or launching new features that might change the risk, etc. So that's something that, again, we'll be working with org leads on going forward very closely. And in Q1, the foundation will be stewarding a conversation around a proposal to get more RAD distributed to the orgs in order to put forward RAD incentives for contributors. And that's especially for those contributors who have not had a RAD allocation yet, or those who have not yet fully vested their own RAD allocation. For those of you who have existing smart contracts, this may or may not affect you, but we do want to make sure that those who have not received a RAD allocation yet, this is something that we'll be working on in Q1. So you can also be contacting your org lead about this effort, and they might be reaching out to you to let you know how they plan on proceeding within their org's request to the Treasury. Moving on to the updates on our objectives. We had our Foundation Council meeting in Zug in December. This is one of our quarterly meetings. And we also started work on our 2024 audit. The good news for the foundation is that we got news from our regulatory authority, which is called ESA, that we only have to do a limited audit going forward as opposed to a regular audit, and that will require far less time and money. So we're quite pleased on that front. That's really, really good. Moving to the work we've done for the Radworks ecosystem, Sally and myself drafted and submitted the Foundation Org 2025 proposal as part of the multi-org proposal, and then we facilitated the 2025 multi-org proposal and getting that over the finish line twice. So I'm glad we got there in the end. Yeah. If you want, I've included the links here if you want to check back on the proposals as passed. Some of our contributors also attended DevCon as well, which was nice for them to attend events and talks related to marketing, grant giving, and operations in the Web3 space, and of course hang out with the DRIPS team and get hyped about DRIPS. The grants program, I wanted to give a shout out to the grants program. We talked actually with Jason and Ele from DRIPS about how the foundation could potentially work with them to facilitate certain kinds of contributions by incentivizing external contributors to, do interesting, helpful, valuable contributions to DRIPS. And as you heard from Jason, they've got a lot going on right now. So we've decided that we're going to kind of kick this can down the line a little bit so that we can work more closely with the DRIPS team when they have a little bit more bandwidth to really understand what kind of contributions would be the most helpful so that we can really clearly define those for the community and incentivize them accordingly with grants. So stay tuned on that front. We hope to see some progress in the next quarter or two. And then on the legal side, this kind of takes so taking us back to the multi-org proposal for a minute and other org proposals. But there was sort of a multi-jurisdictional coordination and analysis effort to understand what entity would be the best for driving and organizing the work around the Radworks product. So in the end, it was recommended that we move forward with using Monatic GmbH, so resurrecting an older original entity in this ecosystem to do the development around the Radworks product, at least for now. And I've linked to a little section from the Radworks product org that expands on that a little bit more. The foundation org, when it comes to budget, we are also under budget, probably upwards of 700,000 USDC under budget. We're still finalizing these numbers and still getting invoices in for 2024 work. So we'll be looking to finalize our books in February and anticipate publishing a report to Radworks in early March with a clearer financial report and how we spent funds. So that's it on my end, on our end at the foundation. Does anyone have any questions?
Foundation has a new website.
Oh my gosh, Brandon, I you know what? I need to update and add that as an update to this community.radworks post. With the help of Brandon, the Better Internet Foundation website has been updated in terms of its content has been a bit tweaked, but mainly it just looks very professional. And thank you very much, Brandon, for your work. I'll add that here after this call. All right, so maybe just to wrap up, I mean, we're well ahead of schedule. Maybe just to kind of go back to Johannes and Alexi to kind of give an overview of how things are transitioning between 2024 and 2025 with regards to Radicle and the Radworks Seed Network. Maybe touch on maybe the movement of some people, but also to how development is being divided between the entities.
Should I start, or do you want to start?
I can start. I guess I can talk about the Radicle Org, and you can talk about the Radworks product org. I mean, basically, the main thing is we're kind of stripping down Radicle to kind of its core, which is really the protocol and the CLI, and therefore also cutting down the number of contributors who are paid to three part-time people, which is myself, Lawrence, and Eric, and of course Sally on the operations. And the rest of the team is going to be moving to Johannes's organization, so the product, or I guess we don't have an official name for it yet. And yeah, it's kind of a nice transition also because they'll be doing mostly the same things, just under a different team. So there isn't like a huge shuffling of roles. It's actually just kind of what the different orgs are going to be focused on. And for Radicle, this is going to allow us to find sustainability a little bit quicker because we're essentially, it's less demanding to run in terms of financially. And that keeps also the protocol kind of more like slower moving, more stable, and kind of a little bit more nimble. And then the product organization can kind of build out the user experience around the kind of small core. So that's kind of the perspective from the Radicle side. Johannes, maybe you want to talk about the product side.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say I'm super glad that I could meet like so many people that have already so much Radicle experience for a team that built something on top of Radicle. I think it also makes a lot of sense for me, like in my own head, to see Radicle really as like the protocol, the network, and like this first layer, this thin layer of like user experience on top, which is like the CLI, and the Radworks product, name to be announced eventually. maybe. As like a way of like how can we package and focus some of the efforts on like a certain narrow user group that is going to be so happy with it that they can make this like costly switch going from like one code hosting solution to another, and how can we do things that don't typically fit well into like an open source project, like into a true open source project, and how can we separate there, and also over time create clear boundaries with different incentives. Like I have for-profit open source project, for example, would always have a conflict of interest, and I think to me it makes a lot of sense to keep those things in two separate entities, because then we can push for things as an outside stakeholder in the and the Radicle core team can push against it if it doesn't make sense, for example. But at the same time, if we are aligned, we can use our resources and add like full-time employees to some of the points that we see as valuable to contribute to. And I think that's going to be really helpful. So contributing back to Radicle or to Radworks is going to happen in a couple of ways. First of all, I think what we learned from the users that are going to use it, and by it I mean the full package, is there's an information flow between all of us here. So the user feedback is going to flow back. Then we can make code contributions, and then the value that we create in first by offering software that is valuable to someone, and then by them paying us, that value is going to be captured and somehow brought back into the Radworks ecosystem. We're currently still trying to figure out how exactly that's going to happen, but we have already found like a couple of mechanisms how we can do that. So I personally am very happy with the setup, and yeah, looking the practicalities. I mean, we are currently in the transition. As you said, there's not a strong break. A lot of people are going to continue on their trajectory, maybe a bit nudged in a certain direction, slowly adjusting, the focus into this, like whatever we want to put in this product experience package. But yeah, that's where we're starting.
Thank you, Johannes. Thanks, Alexi. Any questions for those two around where things are headed? All right. I'll take silence as a no, but I'm looking forward to the Q1 update. And okay, well, 50 minutes in, I think we're ready to wrap things up. If there are no outstanding questions, let's call it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.